Mother Ximenes' Handbook for Grade School Nuns. 1. Things Catholic children should know.
1. The equator is 8,000 miles long. Do not accept contradiction on this point. 2. The uranium story. Once a little boy was digging in his backyard, and he found a piece of uranium. He held it up in the air, and a plane which was passing overhead stopped dead. It did not move on until the little boy buried the uranium again. That's how they found out what uranium can do. 3. The mother of St. Louis IX of France said to him when he was a boy, "I would rather see you fry in hell than ever see you commit a mortal sin." 4. There is a priest living in the walls of St. Sophia's Church in Constantinople. He will come out when the church is returned to Christian hands. 5. The Ouija board story. A group of irreverent young people were playing with a Ouija board one night when they asked if there was a God. The Ouija board said yes, and the roof fell in, killing everybody.
2. Ways to cultivate the fear of dying in mortal sin.
1. Point out how difficult it is to make a perfect act of contrition just before death. To prove it, have your students put their heads down on their desks and imagine that they are dying horribly, miles from any priest. Then ask them to try to be sorry for their sins without being afraid of hell. If any of them think they can do it, punish them. 2. Tell this story. Once there was an old man who hadn't gone to Mass or communion for years. Whenever he got sick, he would call a priest, but every time the priest came, the old man would say, "You can go away. I feel better now." Well, one dark, windy night, the old man became deathly ill, and he tried to get a priest. It was midnight, so all the priests at the church were asleep, and no one answered the phone. Then the old man sent his little daughter to the church to fetch a priest, and when she got there, the rectory and church were dark and still. The wind howled cheerlessly, and there were unexplained rustlings in the bushes. The little girl rattled the doors and pounded on the windows, but nobody came. Then she noticed a little window in which a flickering red light was burning, but before she could try it, a deep voice from behind the window pane said, "Go home. There will be no priest for this man tonight." The little girl ran home and told everyone what had happened, and everyone remarked that it was strange a priest should say such a thing. Later, it was discovered the window was in the chapel. The old man died miserably, of course. 3. Make your students memorize the litany for a happy death, which may be found on page 1017 of the complete Breviarium Defunctorium. It runs thus. When the numbing chill of my last illness creeps slowly northward from my stony toes, then God help me. When my skin turns slowly from its normal peachy hue to the color of cream cheese, then God help me. When my red corpuscle can hardly drag themselves around the footpaths of my arteries, then God help me. When my pores, like tiny mouths, are gasping for life, and some of them are collapsing with an audible sigh, then God help me. When the rattling in my throat drowns out the clatter of my beads, then God help me. When the dreary moaning about my bed has changed to an expectant hush, then God help me. When the fading breath of life dribbles fitfully from my chalky cheeks, then God help me. And when at last Sister Death comes to drag me away, deliver me to the right address. Amen.
3. Conversion tactics.
If you have, say, a little girl in your class whose mother is Protestant, do at least some of the following things. 1. Lecture at great length on the sorrows of a mixed marriage. 2. Say things like, "Susie, your mother isn't Catholic, is she?" And tell her that her mother might be converted through prayer and good example. 3. Mention to the class that Protestants have a funny way of saying "Our Father." Ask Susie if this isn't so. 4. Point out that Protestants can go to heaven, but that when they get there, they may not know what it's about.
Study Guide for Adventures in Arithmetic, Grades 3 and 4. 1. Count the doubles in the picture. 2. How many evil children are being tortured? 3. Why do the children deserve what they are getting? 4. Ways of raising money.
1. Raffle your grandmother out of purgatory. This kind of drawing has always been successful. The winner gets a plenary indulgence for some deceased member of his family. Not that one can buy indulgences, of course, that was settled long ago, but one can make donations. 2. At Christmas, have your students sell sick call kits door to door. Some children persist calling them death kits, but this should be discouraged. 3. Have drives of all kinds. Paper drives, bottle cap drives, jelly jar drives. The student who works the hardest should be given a reward. For instance, you might let them make new paper covers for the textbooks. 4. Point out to your students that sisters will starve if thoughtful mothers do not deluge them with pies, cakes, and assorted pastries.
5. The May Procession.
This event should be prepared for by months of rehearsing in the church. Though the students will be missing class during these times, they can recite Our Fathers and Hail Marys, and you had better see to it that they do. The collected prayers can be put into a spiritual bouquet for the pastor. By way of encouragement, you might tell your students that the U.S. record is held by St. Ximenes Grade School in Los Angeles, which won amassed 9,686,723 Hail Marys, together with a comparable number of Our Fathers and solemn doxologies, in 2 months. The bouquet was sent to the parish priest in a pickup truck. The human rosary is the most important part of any May procession. Children will fight to be made part of this living chain of tributes, and boys have been known to squabble viciously for the privilege of being an Our Father. You should choose carefully those who will make up the crucifix, taking into account height as well as moral character. And it might be well to get a fat boy to be the little round medal. One note about May Queens. It is best for the sisters to govern the choice of the girl for this part, especially if the school has lots of boys in it. Experience shows that the boys will choose some horrid little snit who's been trolloping all over school. Girls, on the other hand, will choose some homely thing with pigeon toes and a runny nose. What you want, of course, is someone who will grow up to look like the Catholic art calendar representation of Mary.